And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon. Today, I'm talking with Jonathan Miller. Jonathan, first of all, thank you for spending some time with me on my podcast.
Thank you for having me, Michael. I'm really glad to be here.
Well, you're welcome. It's going to be great. Jonathan's he's a founder of Parsonex. He's actually created and launched a movie as well. He's got a big background, a man of faith, and he's just got a lot to share with our community around building businesses, building teams so that your business can be more successful. So we're going to talk about lots of things today. And as we get into that, Jonathan, tell me and explain to my audience, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
I bribed a few people, got really lucky, and the reality is that, I don't think we never know our path. As you know, there's a famous proverb that says that we make plans and then God directs our footsteps. And I think that is, we kind of have an idea. I grew up actually lower middle income. I never did without a meal. I was fine. I had great parents who loved me, but I always perceived that people, I guess, had things that I didn't have. And so I was always driven to go be successful in business and financially, one, because I had to make some money to pay for college and do various things. But I always say that entrepreneurs take advantages of opportunities that come, and you have to be in a position where you can do that. And I've had a succession of those types of things in my life that I was able to take opportunities and move forward with them. And there's plenty that didn't work out. So you just keep going when that happens. But right out of college, I got into the financial services. And actually, while I was in college, I got into the financial services industry and did an entrepreneurial pursuit. I moved to Colorado in 2000, started I was an independent advisor with a firm, became a branch manager. And I just had some good fortune where I was a couple miles away from my now late mentor, who really just took an interest in me without any reason. He took an interest in me and really just helped me and answered questions for me and guided me. And I think it's important to have somebody like that. But really, I think I always knew that I wanted to do something that was going to create freedom for me. I've always perceived that financial success gives us freedom to do the things we want to do, or whether it's to bless others, or whether it's to build businesses. Sometimes it's just a comma and a zero that's the difference, and that can be a lot. I'm not saying that's not a small amount, but I do think that you want to do something. I wanted to do something that I was passionate about. Initially, I wasn't passionate about financial services necessarily, but I was good at it. I could talk to people, and there were some things I learned about investing that I said, wow, this really is a better way. And over time, I just was able to surround myself with great people. In 2007, we started the Parsonex Securities, which is the original broker dealer that now has grown. Everybody said we couldn't do it. Everybody's like, Jonathan's 29 years old. He's too young. He can't run a broker dealer. I think at the time it was the largest approved broker dealer with FINRA. We had about 65 slots for advisors. You have to have these regulatory approvals for these things. But a lot of things changed over the years, and there's times we had to kind of rethink our business plan. But really, we were fortunate because we built a lot. We surrounded ourselves with a lot of good people. We attracted a lot of good people. Having a great culture is a lot about being magnetic, and that's both repelling people and attracting people. And that just naturally kind of happens when you have a strong culture. But yeah, it's been, there's a lot more to it than that. But at the end of the day, started right out of college, independent, and just built slowly over time. And I didn't quit. I would say that so many people go and give it a little bit of a run, and if it works a little bit, I'll do more. In this case, I've been pretty focused and pretty disciplined over about 25 years. And so it takes a long time before it looks like what it does today. And people see the glory, they don't know the story. And there's a lot of story behind it.
Yeah. So you have a similar story of what I've always heard of, like Willie Nelson, right? He was the overnight success that spent 30 years playing in honky tonks.
It's so true, Michael. And the other thing I would say that I've been fortunate to, and we found out that we actually know somebody in common who's with our organization. I think the other thing is I've been able to not just see the success, my own success journey and that of the company, but I've really got to be a part of a lot of other people's journey of seeing where they started and what they wanted to do and what they wanted to achieve, whether they thought it was possible or not. And I've got to see that over 10 years. I think the average partner with us has been with us about 16, 17 years, which is quite a long time for an organization that is just a little not quite 20 years old. So
yeah, well, that, and in your industry, there's just a lot of churn. in most organizations. So that kudos to you for building a great culture that allows people to stick. A couple things I want to unpack there, because you started young in the industry, but you said you had this mentor. And talk to business owners about the value of having a mentor. That could be a coach or something, but it could be somebody just in your industry that takes you under their arms and guides and directs you. And how important it is for the entrepreneur to have that. And then secondly, the importance of them to pour that down into others, building that culture.
Wow, that is an amazing question and a very deep question. And I have to be careful not to get emotional because he passed away a few years ago. I would just start out by saying that I had this desire that I wasn't surrounded when I was young necessarily by people who were super successful in business or had gone the path that I've now taken in my life. And so I sought that out initially through reading books. If today people can watch programs like yours and they can get so much information. But I do think that a mentor, somebody who has walked in at least some portion of the path that you want to walk, there is a difference because they can give you feedback and they can give you experience. And they can say, maybe think about it differently. And a lot of times the mentors aren't telling you what to do. They're just giving you encouragement and guidance and small tweaks, or suggesting things you're like, oh, I never thought about that. I better check into that one because we might be in trouble if we don't check into that one. But Dave Wickersham was his name. He's actually of a firm that was much larger than ours. And it was the broker dealer for the firm that I joined right out of college. I just happened to open up a tiny little office 2 miles away, not knowing. I mean, this is pure chance or, God's hand in it to some extent, right? In hindsight. And I used to hand deliver the few applications I would do for clients for $50 a month investments. And now running a broker deal, I realized how annoying that probably was to them. But, I didn't do a lot of business initially. And I was 22 years old when I started with that firm. And there wasn't a reason necessarily that he should have invested in me, like from a business standpoint. We got along. There was a time I remember we were at a fundraiser down in Georgia, and we happened to be on the same flight because he's from Denver. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I rearranged my seat to sit by him. And he could have upgraded to first class, but he didn't. And that was probably a turning point where we just spent a lot of time just talking. And of course, I'm just peppering him with questions, but because I wanted to know, there was so much he had to give. He was actually with E.F. Hutton back in the day. So he was one of the original, super experienced guys. So many people from that era had gone on to build firms, and he just knew all these things I had no idea about, not even what was possible. And it's not like we met all the time. It's not like I overdid it over the years. And I think over the years, once we started a broker dealer, there was a little bit of a weird period because we were kind of starting a competitor to them. I mean, not really on the same scale, but then it morphed into kind of comparing notes. And over the years, it just became friendship. And I think that, so he did that without any return for himself, right? For whatever reason, there was a connection there and he was willing to spend time with me. Not overdoing it because there wasn't a financial incentive for him, but we would meet for breakfast, and he just, it meant a lot to me. And there was a lot of key things that happened. And so we try to do the same thing for others. And it's not for financial profit. It's for, it can be at times, or indirectly, maybe it comes back to you, but I think it's because it's just people do that for you and then you do it for them, not because you have to, not because you're obligated to, but because it's just part of the DNA of who some people are. And that's what we've tried to infuse into our culture. And it's not really a mentorship thing, but I will tell you that a couple of years ago, his son reached out to me, and his son became the president of the company. And we went to breakfast at the same place that Dave and I used to go to, and it was just a chat. He's doing really good. The funny thing is, I was in my early 20s, and he seemed like a lot younger at that point, but now he's not that much younger than me. And so I think it's so important for people to try to find that, or be fortunate enough to find that. I'm not sure if that answered both of your questions or not. But I know that.
Well, that's the big one about having somebody building you, and you just kind of touched on of the importance for us as business owners, as leaders, to pour into others, to take those opportunities, because we're really busy, and I really don't have time, Jonathan, to do that. No, there's an impact that you're going to make when you do that, and it benefits you as well. So just the value of pouring into others was the last part of that question.
Wow, Michael, you answered it for me though, because you're right. It benefits us too, right? You get benefit, I think, from pouring into others. It's fulfilling, it's rewarding. it's like, wow, I get to share with someone, and you can see sometimes the potential that they have or things they don't even know. So I do think it's just something, that definitely biblical. There's all kinds of examples in society, in success culture, in the Bible, like that you can look at and say it's really modeled, okay, for people, that you have somebody who's mentoring you, and then you can also mentor other people. But I think it's not. I think sometimes our culture in business is, well, I'll do it if there's a profit in it for me. I'll do it if there's a benefit to me, and there isn't a directly
You can't.
recognizable benefit, but there's a massive benefit. And there's especially a benefit when you have a DNA in an organization like we do, where the leaders have been mentored at some point over the many years, and now they do that as well. Now, sometimes you do have to set boundaries, because people will definitely take up as much time of theirs as you can, just like Dave probably did with me, because as this young guy, I probably would have sat with him for hours and just question. Then I would call them the next day if that had been available. So you got to be respectful on both ends, but it's so valuable. And so we actually have an award we give out every year, not every year, most years. It's called the Wickersham Award, and it's to whoever kind of just helped other people and mentored other people without any scoreboard recognition for that. So
That's so cool. And I love that you're doing that to honor him in his name. But you said something there that you've built this culture, and I want to spend a little bit of time on culture, because I think a lot of small business owners, we don't really invest enough time in the culture of our company. Somebody told me a long time ago is my team is going to treat my prospects and clients the same way that I treat my team, and that my team is really my number one customer. And if I'm going to build a culture, it starts with me. I can't expect them to do it because they're looking at me. And you mentioned something like that about how you've built the culture, how the leadership does things, and it's kind of filtered down. You give this award. Talk to the those who are listening here, our audience, about the importance, I guess, of walking your talk, of understanding what kind of culture do you really want your company to have, and how can you practically every day do one or two things that just pour into that culture to say, this is who we are, this is the DNA of Parsonex, this is us. How does somebody just move in that direction?
I think that the first thing is recognizing that culture isn't just about giving an extra vacation day or coffee or having something. I mean, those can be pieces, but those are like the mechanical, like small things. It's really about how you treat people and care about people. For me, I had heard this and I adopted it years ago from someone who had said that in a lot of businesses, people have the philosophy that they don't get to know people because you're going to have to make tough decisions, and they are hard decisions at times you have to make, especially if you have a larger organization and people are not popular. People don't ever say, yes, please let me go, or it's time for me to move on.
Yeah.
But I think that the opposite side of that is the only way to get the most out of people is to care about them and to get to know them and invest in relationships and encourage them. And it will be more difficult when you do it that from time to time. So you do have to be mentally tough enough and disciplined enough to say, I can still do that and still hold people accountable and make those hard decisions. Otherwise, you can be in that could be a dangerous culture too, if you're not holding people accountable at all and then they take advantage of you. But I've always thought it was worth it. And we try to build great relationships with people. And the term has gotten coined over the years that it's called the Parson. They say the Parsonex family. And I'll be honest with you, it always makes me slightly nervous when they say that, because that is such a high burden of organizational bond that and then when you do have to do things that are difficult, somebody doesn't like it. It's like you're doing something that affects a family member, and now it can be very difficult. But I think that's, to me, culture. I think Peter Drucker said culture eats strategy for breakfast. The only other thing I would say is that once you kind of have an idea of how you want to treat people and what kind of culture you want to build, then you do as a leader have a responsibility to protect it. And I've had to make some very, very difficult calls that would definitely at the time probably cost me money, because there were certain people that could have been very financially beneficial that were not culturally aligned. And it's not like they did like one little thing and then we say, oh, you're out of here, because it's never that clear. But over time, it becomes very clear at times that people are not a cultural fit, and they might be financially profitable to you, but long-term damaging to your culture. And as a leader, you have to evaluate those things and at times make those tough decisions. And I've had several of those over the years, but I will tell you, our culture is better for it. And once those decisions are made, you end up finding out from most people that no, that was the right decision. The person that had to go sometimes doesn't feel like it was the right decision,
Right.
but that's part of the mental toughness you have to have in business. And so it requires, I think, a heart and a passion for it, but it also requires work in maintaining it once you recognize that that's a priority to your organization.
Yeah, and that's really good. And I'm building a relationship with the guy that runs a bank in Tulsa, and he's working to bring faith into the workplace. And he said everything changed for them a number of years ago when they really put God first. But the way they do it is by caring for their employees and their clients and their community. And so it's not like they're out trying to beat people over the head with the Bible and preach the gospel everywhere. It's that they love, they care. They say, "Hey, Jonathan, how you doing? Can I pray for you? Can we talk?" And they have meetings regularly, not to talk about performance, but talk about your life. What's going on in your life? And that's 30 minutes of just you, Jonathan, unpacking what's going on, because they want to know them. And what they have found is, number one, their business has skyrocketed. It's been like 30% growth year over year. But they don't have any trouble attracting great talent and keeping motivated employees, because they realize people aren't there for a paycheck, really. They're there for a culture, an environment where they feel loved and cared for. Is that what you've kind of found?
Uh, I love everything you're saying. And I think that, you know, from a faith standpoint, I also look at it as like, hey, we're business. We're a business. To me, the best demonstration of any kind of faith is exactly what you said, is that just care about people and love people and treat them the way you'd want to be treated, right? That's so rare. I think people aren't chess pieces you move around on a board, okay? It's people have, so getting to know people and finding out what they want, what are their goals, caring about them and their family, asking questions. And again, I must say, because we're further along organizationally, so sometimes problems trickle up a little bit. So I have to deal with the more tough ones sometimes. But it's worth it. It's worth it as long as you can, treat people fair, and you have to keep the organization in mind, because people don't always get along. People don't agree. But I think when you care about people, overall, people understand, hey, I get it. There's tough calls that need to be made. You have to do this, and there's things that have to happen. But I think it's rare just in life. I don't think too many people say, "Hey, how you doing? Really, how you doing? You all right, man?"
Yeah.
And just even a little bit of that, like, I think goes a long way, because people aren't in it for you as the entrepreneur and CEO. They're in it for themselves. They have their own goals and dreams, and they want to do something with their life, or they want to have a lifestyle. And it's not, their life doesn't exist to support the business. The business should exist to provide them freedom and opportunity and a lifestyle that they want, whether they're an employee or 1099 or building their own office with our organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And we call our staff with team members, right? And most of them are 1099, and they're scattered all across the country, but we still communicate with them and love them and send them things and make them feel part of this family. I love the Parsnick's family, but there is a burden there. I get that. And at the same time, people long for that, because we just have been cogs in a wheel for so long. And COVID didn't help anything, throwing everybody back out. But
Yeah.
there are ways to do it online. There are ways to do it personally, and people will respond. And what I found is you don't have to manage people. You love them, and you put them in the right spot on the bus, right? They're going to flourish. They're going to grow most of the time. There's always an exception, but if you just love people, care for people, give them a direction, say, here's where we're going. Come join me. They're there.
You said something really interesting that I've always said about myself, and I don't know 100% how true this is. I believe it is, but you have to ask other people. I always say I'm not a great manager. I really am not. I can do it. And so I wouldn't say I can't do it, but it stresses me out, tires me out, like managing all these details. I'm like, my goodness. What I tend to be is a good leader of other leaders. And so I think early on in an organization, you were talking about building, leadership and building companies. I think that trying to find people who want to be, who are, will take charge and will do things. They just need to be encouraged and just slightly guided and given some feedback, but they're willing to do it on their own. I've always found that that's worked really well for me. And there's other people in our organization that are better at managing details and managing people. But I think in general, most people don't want to be managed. They're not opposed to being led, right? But
Absolutely. Yeah. And you
management is
talked
almost a
earlier
bad word, right?
about the desire for freedom, right? And that's what everybody loves. But I think in leadership, we need to give our people freedom to fail. And I've always looked at it as a bridge going over a body of water. The bridge has guardrails on it. And those guardrails are for safety and protection. And they are boundaries. Within the guardrails, there is a lot of freedom. And I think as leaders, we need to set that up with our team members. Say, here are the guardrails. Within that, I want to equip you and support you and encourage you to go and make decisions. And if you make a decision that would be different than what I would make, let's come talk about it because I'm going to support you in it. And then in the future, we're going to make different decisions, right? But as long as you stay within the guardrails, you're safe. And I think a lot of employees are scared to make decisions because they're going to get fired. Like, no, no, no. Here we go. Does that resonate?
Man, it resonates. And there's things written about that. If you ever read the Talent Code, there's a book called The Talent Code, and then by Daniel Coyle, he also followed it up with the Little Book of Talent, because he talked about why these places around the world, whether it was sports or music, developed top tier talents consistently. Like, basically the 10,000 hour rule. But then everybody, after the first book became a hit, they said, well, what did the places do? We want to know. So it's almost like a little coffee book called The Little Book of Talent. And one of the things he found with all these places they had in common is they created a safe environment to accelerate the failure rate, to accelerate people making mistakes. Because that's how people learn. You're not trying to make a mistake. You're trying to do it right. And you're stretching just above your capability. But in doing that, you're inevitably going to make mistakes and learn and do it faster. And it's something I try to remember myself, because it is very hard when, as an entrepreneur, you start out doing everything.
Right.
Every job, every detail. And then in order to get larger as an organization, to like grow past just being self-employed, like we talked about, you have to trust people and empower them. And if you trust them, but you're directing everything they do, well, then it still comes back to you. Then you're not really growing the capacity of the organization. And it's tough. And I try to do a rule that I heard from someone. I'm not always the best at this either, because it's like, no, I'll take care of that, and you have to really just let people stay in their lanes. They said, if somebody can do something 70% as good as you need to let them do it, because by doing it, then they'll get to 80, then they'll get to 90, then eventually they'll get better than you at it. Yeah. But if you expect this perfection of the same thing that you have done because you can just do everything, yes, that's probably what got you that initial boost, but it's not sustainable and it's definitely not scalable. And so I think
I think
people need to make mistakes. That's how you learn.
That is so good. And entrepreneurs need to hear that. I just termed that the 70% rule. And so you heard it here first, folks. But take that, because once you get to that point, you need to delegate. You need to equip other people and let them fail fast. Teach them, train them, because they're going to get to 80, 90% a lot faster. But what's going to happen is it's going to take that burden off of you and your plate, so you can focus more on what you're great at. Because we know out of this podcast, Jonathan's not a great manager. He shouldn't be managing people. Neither am I, brother. Leader. So I've got people around me. My son, Caleb, is my chief operating officer. He loves managing people and tasks and things. Yeah. I'm like, oh, praise God. Thank you. Because that's not my gift. But as an entrepreneur for years, I was kind of doing everything, right? So I think entrepreneurs need to hear a lot of things. They really need to hit rewind and go back about 20 minutes and start from the beginning and re-listen to this, because Jonathan has just talked about a lot of things that entrepreneurs they struggle with. We're in the midst of it, and we need, dare I say, a mentor like you, Jonathan, who's been down there, who's dropped some nuggets and said, I don't do it perfectly, but here's what I found. I've built a family culture. I love and encourage my team members. We've got a great place. We let people fail. We encourage them. We hold them accountable. How do you do all of that? Man, we can be here for hours talking about that, Jonathan. That would be a fun conversation. But how do anything else that you want to add to the conversation before we start wrapping this thing up? Anything I've missed or counsel or advice you just love to give people?
I think based on just our conversation, one, thanks for having me on, and I love your energy. And it sounds like we have a lot of similar philosophies, which is fantastic. And I think the encouragement I would give is that one thing, like you talked about, it sounds like we have similar personalities. I think sometimes people think though that that's what you have to lead an organization. I think in business, there's 100 things that need to happen, and they all have to happen and be done well. And you're probably only good at 5 of them, maybe 10, maybe if 5, right?
Yeah.
And but you initially have to do all of them, and so you got to surround yourself with people that are complementary to the vision that you want to achieve. Just like you say, if your son's great, that's fantastic. Those are so valuable because different people fit in different, like Jim Collins says, different people get the right people in the right seats on the bus and then drive the bus someplace great. That's critical to anybody who wants to build a business. But there's a difference, I think, between a lot of people know what they'd like to have. They see the results of it, the glory. They see the end result of 10, 15 years of work, but they're not so committed to it that they're willing to sacrifice and work hard and make tough decisions and understand that it's an endurance contest to a large extent. And you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That's how everybody learned, by making mistakes. There's not too many mistakes out there that like are so devastating, because that's what we tell ourselves in our mind. We tell ourselves, man, if this gets messed up, oh my gosh, we have this self-narrative that we're like, oh, it'd be devastating, and I don't know how I'd survive, and just everything. And it's usually not the case. We're usually exaggerating those thoughts. You always want to try to do the right thing and make the best decisions with the information you have. Do what you can where you are with what you have, and that's all anybody can do. And do your best, and then yeah, try to learn from your mistakes and stay humble. And it's very easy to stay humble in business though, because you're always getting a different kind of a challenge. You're like, whoa, haven't dealt with that one before.
Yeah.
So
Like somebody's behind you, yanking the rug out every day, going, "Oh wait, now wait a minute, I got to
yeah,
get back."
whoa.
Come
It's a
on.
different manifestation. It feels similar to this, but very different, So
Okay.
it's, so
But
anyway.
Jonathan, there's been phenomenal. We haven't even hardly touched on Parsonix and things in the financial organization you've built there. So if you're in the financial world, financial advisor or something, check out Parsonix. Is it parsonix.com? Is that the place to go?
Yeah, Parsonix.com is really, it's kind of the wealth management and investing, long-term investing, and really being we are really coaches and mentors for clients through relationships. Just like anything, it's through relationships. So
Absolutely. So how do if somebody's listening to this, whether they're an advisor or not, what are the 1 or 2 best places for them to connect with you to say, gosh, I need some more information, whether it's the Parsonix, LinkedIn, what's the best next step for somebody?
yeah, parsonx.com. There's definitely contact forms on there that routes to the right places. And I think that we're the right fit for a select few advisors. We're structured like a law firm. So it's similar to different organizations out there, but there's also a couple of unique things that are different. We're really focused on investments. A lot of people have other things, like whether, great, there's other things that people have, but we're just investment focused, long-term investing focused. And we bought some companies, and we have in-house portfolio managers. And anyway, we do a really good job over it. We've delivered for a lot of folks over a long period of time. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. It looks great on the end, but there's a process to get to that. So yeah, parsonx.com. And I really appreciate you having me on.
And you are welcome. This has been such a good conversation, and appreciate just who you are as a person, but how you've built the company and just showing up so authentically. Because somebody in your position with building what you've built over the years, but you just show up being Jonathan. I feel like I could go have coffee with you. So I really appreciate that. Thanks for doing that, and just
Yeah,
adding a lot of value.
my pleasure. Well, we're blessed. We're fortunate. We always got to remember we're happy to be here and doing what we do. There's we're a lot, we work hard, but there's a lot of people do a lot harder work than we do. We just get the joy of working with people and trying to make their lives a little bit better. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jonathan Miller, thank you so much for being my guest. Everybody else, thanks for listening, and tune in again next week for another great episode of Experts Speak. Take care. God bless. Right. Let's